Today, we're going to talk about a really cool experiment that used something called hyperautomation. Now, what's that? It's just a fancy way of saying a system that's completely automated from start to finish. And the goal? To change how students learn. But get this, all without adding a single extra minute of work for their teachers.
But before we get into the details, let me ask you this. What if you had a weekly report that showed you exactly what the top 10% of students in your class were doing to get those grades? Their exact study habits. Do you think you might change how you study? Just think about that for a second, because that simple idea is the key to this whole story.
All right, so this whole experiment wasn't just some academic thought bubble. No, it was born from a very real, very urgent problem happening in Vietnam's higher education system. A system that was and is under a ton of pressure.
And this really gets to the heart of it. You've got these two forces pulling in opposite directions. On one side, there's this huge national push to get way more students into university. Great, right? But on the other side, you've got an academic staff that's already completely overloaded with heavy teaching schedules and, frankly, low salaries. You just can't keep piling more and more work on their plates. It's not sustainable.
So this led to a really critical question. How can you possibly help this growing wave of students succeed, especially when a lot of them are the first person in their whole family to ever go to college, without completely burning out your educators? Well, the researchers found a pretty brilliant answer. By shifting their focus away from the teachers entirely and looking directly at the students. And the solution they came up with? It's so clever. It actually comes from a psychological theory that's been around since the 1970s. It's all about using the simple but powerful act of watching. Yeah, the concept is called social modeling. It was developed by a psychologist named Albert Bandura. You might have heard of him. He's the guy behind that famous Bobo doll experiment, where you showed that kids could learn aggressive behavior just by watching adults. The big idea is super simple. We learn how to act by observing and copying other people, especially people we think are credible or successful.
And the process here? It's really straightforward. Step 1, you see someone successful doing something. Step 2, you try to do that same thing. And step 3, you hope to get similar results. So the researchers started wondering, could this apply to studying? What if the students who were struggling could just see what the top students were doing? Would they start copying those habits?
It really all boils down to this fundamental idea from social learning theory. We don't always need someone to explicitly teach us something. Sometimes we can learn just by watching. And in our modern digital world, the idea of watching someone, well, that can mean something totally different.
So, okay, that's the theory. But how do you take a classic psychological concept like that and turn it into a real-world experiment? Well, this team translated it into a modern, fully automated digital nudge using the university's own tech.
The setup was a classic randomized control trial, very scientific. They took 309 first-year business students and just randomly split them into two groups. Group 1, the control group, they just went about their course like normal. Nothing changed for them. But Group 2, the treatment group, they started getting a special email every single week.
And this weekly email, this was the whole experiment right here. It was a really simple report that compared a student's own activity on their online learning management system, the LMS, to what their classmates were doing. It showed them their own usage, the average for the top 10% of students, and, just as important, the average for the bottom 10%. This is such a brilliant move because it's using both social modeling, here's what to do, and something called contrast modeling, and here's what not to do.
Okay, so the experiment's up and running. These automated emails are flying out every week. The big question, of course, is, did it work? Did this simple little digital nudge actually change anything? Remember that question I asked you at the very beginning? If you saw that the top students were logging in more often or clicking on more links, would you change your own behavior? Well, let's find out what these 309 students actually did. And wow, the results were pretty fascinating. When you look at the comparison between the two groups, a really clear pattern just jumps out. For logins, for quizzes, for URLs, for files, for total activity. Just look at the difference. The treatment group, that's the one getting the weekly report, is visibly higher in every single category. They were just way more engaged with the course materials than the control group.
And to put a hard number on it, check this out. The effect on URL clicks was just dramatic. The students who got the report, they clicked on over 40% more of the links the lecturer posted. Now that, along with their total usage and number of logins, was a statistically significant increase. Plain and simple, the nudge worked.
So this is really cool, right? But this is about so much more than just one successful experiment. The results here have some huge implications for the future of education, especially as remote and online learning become more and more common.
So what are the big takeaways from all this? Well, first, it's pretty clear you can nudge student behavior in a positive direction using totally automated data. And the best part, it requires zero extra work from the teachers. That's huge. But you got to be careful. There are some important things to keep in mind. The system has to be tracking behaviors that actually lead to success, not just random busy work. And while online activity definitely shot up, we still need more research to see exactly how this connects to final grades.
And that leaves us with a final, really interesting question to think about. If a machine, an automated system, can teach us good habits and show us how to learn more effectively, what does that mean for the future role of the teacher? Maybe it points to a future where educators can spend less time on nagging and reminders and more time on the things that humans do best: inspiring, mentoring, and building a real deep understanding of the world.